city centre more than 500 years after he died in the Battle of Bosworth. The skeleton was discovered on the first day of an archaeological dig at the seat of an old Franciscan friary underneath a council car park 3 years ago. A remarkable discovery. Sky's Adele Robinson is at Leicester University, and since then people have been working hard to make this day happen, Adele.
They have, and it's finally here. We saw the coffin for the first time that's been designed by Richard III's descendant, the nephew of his, 15 times removed, Michael Ibsen. He was here, and it came out with an air of solemnity. There was silence all around. There was a public ceremony that happened here. There were a number of key speeches made by different members of the clergy. Both Catholic and the Church of England were represented because, of course, Richard III was a pre-Reformation king. And white roses that signify the House of York, Richard III was a Yorkist, were placed onto his coffin by various members of the research team and relatives. We have one of them here with us, a very important person called Michael Morris, archaeologist. Now, you are the first person who discovered Richard III, although you didn't know it at the time, did you?
No, so I was the site director for the project, and I was the first person to uncover one of the leg bones. We didn't realise it was Richard's at the time, but yeah, I was honoured enough to be able to take part in the project and be that first person.
So I was going to get you to describe the moment that you did uncover those bones, but you didn't know at the time. So the moment that you found out that the bones that you had discovered were Richard III.
Yeah, so that moment came about a week later after we'd confirmed that this grave was in the church, and it was really the last 5 minutes of Joe Appleby, my colleague, was uncovering the bones, and it looked, everything was normal, and it was just a skeleton, and then the curvature of the spine came up in the very last 5 minutes of uncovering it, and we had this young male adult in the right area of the church with some head injuries and curvature of the spine. Who else could it be? There was this sort of stunned moment of disbelief.
So taking on from that moment, the last 2.5 years, there's been a huge amount of work going on, to today, the coffin. How did you feel seeing the coffin containing the remains of the king that you found out here today?
I thought it was a fantastic, really moving moment. We've had the archaeology, we've had the science, the serious side of it. This time we saw the sort of the emotional side. We saw him as a person today, I think, for the first time. Well, maybe not for the first time, but we were able to put the science aside, finally, and move on to the next stage.
Would you say this is your best discovery ever?
Yeah, well, I get asked what's the best thing you've ever found all the time, and I've got that answer now, yeah, definitely.
And this couldn't have been a more different reception, could it, for Richard III? Because, of course, 530 years ago, he was brought into the city naked and bloody and over the back of a horse.
A complete contrast. Yeah, I mean, Richard was a defeated king 500 years ago. All the historical documents suggest he wasn't treated very well when he was brought back to Leicester. This complete contrast, and I think people are going to be really pleased with what happens this week.
Thanks very much for your time, Michael Morris, the archaeologist who discovered the remains of Richard III. So the coffin has now left. It's on its way first to Fen Lane Farm, the place closest to where Richard III died. It'll then go on to Dadlington Church, which is where some of the battle dead are buried, another place, and then the Battle of Bosworth, the Bosworth Visitor Centre, and before coming back into the city and eventually to the cathedral, where his coffin will enter into the cathedral ahead of his reinterment on Thursday.
Adele Robinson, for the moment, thanks very much indeed. We'll be keeping a close eye on events in Leicester throughout the day here on Sky News. Now, the